Want to achieve network marketing success? Then you're in the right company. Hello, and welcome to Leave Nothing to Chance, hosted by networking marketing giant John Solleder. Learn everything you need to know about the network marketing space from somebody who's actually done it. Join us every week for front row seats as we feature some of the finest and most successful personalities in network marketing. Leave nothing to chance. Join us now.
Well, today is a really special day, folks. You know, people come into your life for reasons. And 39 years ago, I met a guy who I knew of. I met, and he may or may not remember this because he was already famous and I was just coming up the food chain, but in the sport of wrestling. But the first time I ever met this gentleman was in Annapolis, Maryland, at the Annapolis Wrestling Clinic. And I'll never forget that Tom, like everybody else, finished a workout. It was a July or August day. It was hot as could be, very, very humid there on the water. And we all finished the workout. Everybody was going to, take a shower, get back to their room and sleep. And Tom threw on his regular sneakers to go run. And I remember that's the way that you achieve in life, and learned so much from a distance from him. And it was a little intimidating, to be honest with you. Tom Husted was already a New Jersey State Wrestling champion at that point, had placed in the States as a freshman, as a sophomore, won the New Jersey State title as a junior, was the MVP of the state tournament that year, and went on to win it again his senior year, and just was a record-setting guy. And growing up in the same area, you would pick up the newspaper in those days. For those of you under 40, those are those things on paper that have words on them. But anyhow, and Tom was always in the paper. It was always a story about Tom's achievements. And a few short years later, Tom had graduated from Lehigh University in Pennsylvania. And I was working I was in my senior year of college at Seton Hall University. And I was working for a mutual friend of ours, a guy named Dave Brzezinski. And Dave was also a great wrestler. And Dave had, amongst other things, been the first American to ever win a medal in the sport of Sambo. Dave was a great judo player as well, great wrestler, and actually tied the great Dan Gable in the 1968 Olympic trials. And I was working for Dave. Dave gave me my first sales job. I was selling health club memberships in Westwood, New Jersey, way, way back. And Tom came into the club one day, and next thing I know, he's in my office. And Dave's behind him, and Dave says, John, you need to listen to what Tom has to say here. Okay, of course. But this is Tom Husted. This is royalty in my world of wrestling. This is like, wow, Tommy Husted wants to talk to me. Wow, how cool is that? And we shook hands, and we sat down and shared a couple of fast stories. And I said, Tommy, what can I do for you? Tom started to tell me what he was doing for a living. And that was that he had joined a company called Herbalife that I had never heard of. And it was in something called multi-level marketing, which I also had never heard of. And during the course of the conversation, he shared with me some things about that company and about the products. And I said, I ought to start using those. Those sound great. I was still training, obviously, myself then. I had gotten very involved in the sport of judo at that point. And long story short, because it was Tom Husted, I really listened. I listened with both ears. And Tom, I don't know if you remember this or not, but you said, hey, for $32, you can start your own business. And this story's become famous in multi-level, by the way, because I said, well, sure, I can write you a check, but I can't cover it for a couple of days, $32. And you were nice enough to say, hey, I could hold it till Friday if you want. And I said, Friday's fine. I won't tell you which Friday it was, but if you'll hold it till Friday, I can cover it. I think it was the next week I actually was able to cover the check. That's how we got started. So welcome to the show, my long-term friend, my first real mentor in network marketing, and my good friend all these years later, living over in Thailand. He's at a resort this week. So, Tom, how are you?
I'm doing very good. And you, John?
Tom, I'm great, man. And this is just so much fun for you and I to be together after all these years talking about the beginning of our careers and my career in network marketing, certainly. But, Tom, let's just stay on wrestling for a minute because, I had such great respect for you as an athlete that I listened to you. And in network marketing, that's a lot of time, is who approaches you. It's not what they approach you about, it's who. If you had just come to me as some guy about Herbalife, honestly, I probably wouldn't have listened. I wasn't looking for anything like that. But because it was somebody who I held in such high esteem and respect for, it was like I was all ears because it was Tom Husted, state champion, Tom Husted, Lehigh University wrestler, Tom Husted, college graduate, Tom Husted, great student, Tom Husted, great reputation in our community. So I listened to you because of that. And then once you segued into what it was, I got very, very interested. And I think as one teaching point here, folks, remember, it's how you approach people and the credibility that you use. But Tom, let's talk about that. I mean, you graduated Lehigh.
But the bottom line is the products worked and you lost weight.
That's right. That's right. And I gained energy.
If it didn't work and you didn't lose weight, I don't know if you would have gotten involved, right? But it worked and you lost weight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with Herbalife? I don't remember.
I don't think you know the whole story. So this was 1983 when I got involved, and also when you got involved. I graduated from Lehigh University in 1982. I had a coaching assistant job at Bloomsburg State in Pennsylvania. I was going to go for my MBA. So in 1983, I went there to do that. I only lasted one semester for my MBA because after one semester, I got so disillusioned with my MBA classes because all they were talking about was how to maximize short-term profit. And I realized I really wasn't interested in that. And so I was going for my MBA. I realized that's not what I really wanted to do. And after a semester, I left. And I didn't know quite sure what I was going to do. So I went back to New Jersey, and within a very short period of time, I found out about Herbalife through an ad in the newspaper, went to a business opportunity meeting, and that's where I met Anne Marie. And I had a gut feeling, even before I knew much about Herbalife, that this was going to be big. And then it was just confirmed by the products and the marketing system and everything I saw. And I signed up immediately, started using the products. And so that's how originally I started out in 83. And then shortly after that, you and I connected. I think you were one of the first people I sponsored in back then.
And what was remarkable about that, we were both so young. I mean, we thought we thought because we graduated college that, or I was about to, and you had already had, you were a couple years ahead of me, that we knew it all, and we would soon find out that we didn't. But, I go back to
how little did we really know, right?
Well, and you were really a good teacher, because I remember sitting down at one of those little round desks or tables that they had there out in the foyer there at the health club, and going through Tell, Show, Try, Do, which was the teaching philosophy of Herbalife developed by Mark Hughes and Larry Thompson. And that Tell, Show, Try, it was so logical. And all I could think, and I think we probably talked about it then so long ago, but I remember thinking, here I had gone to a great university. You had gone to a great university. We both had degrees. We were both good students. And yet neither one of us had any clue how to make money. And here we were going to learn from two guys who, one had graduated high school, and I think the other one hadn't. And it was like, hey, we're going to learn this business from these guys who didn't go to school. There was a lesson in that. But they had, and I want you to comment on that, because they had created such a wonderfully duplicatable, easy to learn system that anybody, whether educated or non-educated, could learn and do and succeed to some level, depending on how hard they wanted to work.
Oh yeah, right. They made it simple. I mean, first of all, the whole concept was ingenious with bringing Chinese herbs into the mainstream, and then doing it through a diet program initially, and then you become a walking advertisement when you lost 20 pounds. So it was ingenious. And then you had Larry Thompson and Mark Hughes, and they were both quite amazing people, and really believed, of course, in the products. They used it themselves and the marketing system, and they pretty much built it from scratch. I mean, it was for Mark and Larry, rags to riches story, a great American success story, and with their great determination. And you remember we met Mark Hughes twice. We met him once in Connecticut at a big meeting there. And then when you came out to California to visit me when I was living out there, we went to Culver City, stopped by the headquarters, And Mark Hughes actually spent a little time talking with us, even though he had a very busy day. And he was very warm and welcome, as he always is. You know, he was really a special person that really treated everybody as a big family.
You know, he really was. And what was remarkable about those meetings and the subsequent meeting we had with Larry Thompson in Hartford was that, you know, Mark did not know what rank you were. Mark did not know you were. I mean, I'm sure he knew who his big distributors were at that point, like any owner does. But
yeah, of course.
we were just, you know, two kids. And I remember we went to that meeting. And afterwards, he, you know, circled everybody who wanted to circle up. And we sat in the circle with Mark Hughes. I mean, here we are. I'm barely past being a teenager, and you know, you're early 20s, and you know, he treated us just like he did the guys who were 40 or 50 with, you know, great contacts and plenty of money to build the business. He treated us really well, and that was one of, you know, besides the fact that you and I became such good friends, what was one part of it, but then the other part of it was I felt like I had joined a family, you know, with Herbalife, and you know, but Mark was a remarkable human being. And Tom, I don't know if you remember that whole story or not, but I was saying, well, remember, I don't know if you remember how we got to Culver City, but we took the bus and we went the wrong way and we wound up in like the worst neighborhood, the worst neighborhood.
Yeah, I think I remember that on that crazy bus with some crazy people.
I'm thinking well, it's a good thing we could both wrestle a little bit. On the other hand, the rest of the guys seem to have guns and knives on that bus, and we got off in the wrong neighborhood.
Right.
And then we finally, I think by the time we got to see Mark, we were pretty relieved that we were still breathing, you know. But that was
right.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, he was such a gentleman, and he cared about people. And unfortunately, that's something that's gone out of multi-level today, Tom. It's become just such a business of, you know, corporate people buying companies and not having any idea what the field is really like. Not all of them, but some of them, you know. Unfortunately, the industry isn't what it was when we joined, and maybe we were a little naive because we were young. I get it was a business, but boy, you and I loved Herbalife, man. We loved that company and what it stood for, you know.
I mean, both of us totally believed in the company and its products and everything. And I think both of us initially did not get involved just to make money. I mean, it was really about the products and the vision. And
But you know, one of the other lessons, you know, I learned a lot from you, Tom, that I don't give you credit for all the time, but I actually do in my books. Okay, Leave Nothing to Chance and Moving Up 2020, which I hope you've read. You can get them on Amazon, and so can everybody else. Moving Up 2020 was. I wrote that in 2019, Tom, not having any idea what 2020 was going to be like, and we know what happened. And of course, Leave Nothing to Chance, name of my show. But and I talk about the story with Tom. But you know, it was interesting because, you know, as you recall, I graduated Seton Hall. Matter of fact, you were at my graduation party. And I graduated, and Ronald Reagan spoke that day about mentorship, amongst other things. And I'm sitting there thinking, hey, I'm still trying to get a job, right? Because I'm getting out of college. That's what you do when you get out of college. You get a job, right? And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. I've made more money in the last 30 days, you know, like just goofing around with this Herbalife thing than some of my friends who had already taken JOBs. And I think what happened there was, you know, Reagan spoke, I graduated, right, went through all of that. That was in May of 83. And then in June of 83, you did a really smart thing. And I don't know if you remember this or not, but you probably do. Your father had lent you his station wagon, that old station wagon, right, that he had in the driveway. I don't think he drove it much. I think it was like a spare car. And you said, listen, we're going to go to Hartford, and we're going to hear this Larry Thompson guy talk. And I said, who's Larry Thompson again? He's like, oh, he's the vice president of the company. I'm like, wow. So, you know, we met Mark Hughes and Larry Thompson within the first, 45 days of being in this thing. And we drove up there, and a couple things on the way, right? One was, it was you and I. It was a girl I was dating who would join the business, and it was the two other guys that I had sponsored, I think, Peter and Eric. One was a roofer, and the other guy, I think, was unemployed.
Oh, yeah, I remember all them, right.
And of course, we're making no money between the five of us, right? We're kids. So I think we shared a hotel room. I don't know if you remember that or not.
Right. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we all chipped in for gas, shared a hotel room, yeah.
Exactly. So we go up to Hartford, which give people perspective on that, about 4 hours north of where we were living at the time in New Jersey. And Larry made that famous statement that day of, you know, for things to change, you have to change, and for things to get better, you have to get better.
Right.
And, I don't remember what else happened that day. I remember meeting Larry and shaking hands with him for, all of 2 seconds. There was, I don't know, 3,000 or 4,000 people in the room. But that was so smart of you to get not only me, but get those other people there, because you never know in a business who's going to get it, who's going to rise, and who's going to fail or who's going to
Right.
quit. But I
Mhm.
got that day, and I resonated with Thompson because, he was construction. My family, as you know, was construction.
Right.
And it was kind of like that thing, well, if this guy can do it, maybe I can do it to some level as well. But also that statement about for things to change, which it turns out was actually from Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn had actually said that years
Right. Jim
before, and
Rohn.
Larry and Jim were tied at the hip. And of course, Larry eventually would bring Jim over to Herbalife, the tail end of Jim's career and life. He spent, helping the Herbalife company. But that was really smart on your part. And once again, it's another teaching point. Get your people in front of the best people that you possibly can, right? So here I am about 45, maybe 60 days in the business, and Tommy had already got me in front of the owner of the company and the founder, who wasn't that much older than us, right? Mark was probably
Right.
27, 28, right? So we resonated with him. He was, he was our peer group. He was happened to own the company, but he wasn't that much older than us. And of course, Larry Thompson, who was older, but already super successful, really, really smart on Tom's part. And also, of course, Tom seeing all of those successful distributors walk across the stage and share their stories was really smart. So let's come back to that. So fast forward on that. We eventually, I had come out to California for a bit.
Well,
right?
well, wait a second. Let me just interject here. Not fast forward yet, I don't think, because it was kind of a rough road for us. Because what happened was, as I'm sure you recall, so I sponsored you in. I had been sponsored in by Anne-Marie, who was great. She's a wonderful woman, really into the products and everything. I don't want to go into too many details about Richard, but her husband was involved with the business, and I would not have signed up under them if I had met him initially. I just met Anne-Marie. I really resonated with her, but I did not resonate with Richard. And so that's a big thing for people. Sponsor is so important. Make sure you resonate with your sponsor. He has integrity, his track record, all those things you want to really check out, because your sponsor is very important. It's like your mentor. Anne-Marie was a great sponsor. Her husband wasn't. And ultimately, we left Herbalife for a year. We dropped out because of the stuff that was going on, connect with Richard. It was very unethical. I don't even want to go into it, but we got to the point where we both agreed, say, John, let's just find a new sponsor. This has gotten too much. And again, I don't want to go into details, but it was definitely so much that we had to just say, we have to find somebody else. But till we resigned, but we had to sit out for 1 year. We could not do the business for 1 year. And during that period, we sat out for 1 year. You went searching for a good sponsor. You wanted to find the best. Meanwhile, I'd gotten kind of disillusioned with things. I broke up with my girlfriend. So I ran out to California to live out there for a while. And then at some point, you came out there to visit me, as I recall, to give me the good news that you found this great sponsor, Mark Zuckerbrod, he was amazing, one of the top people, incredible integrity and everything. He was the best sponsor you could ask for. And it turns out he had gone to my high school, and he came out and told me, yeah, I know him. He's a few years older than me. He had been a good tennis player and everything. And then I, talked to him. I said, yeah, he's great. Let's sign up under him. So then we started over. I came back to New Jersey, and we started over again under Mark. And it was great. It was night and day compared to what we had gone through before. And that just shows you, very, very important, who sponsors you, who's your upline in any multi-level marketing company. Make sure you have a good sponsor and good upline and good support. That's really important. And, we learned that lesson the hard way. So then we had this great sponsor. Herbalife was taking off. It was going to be the fastest company in the history of any company in the world to reach $1 billion in sales. I think they were going to do it in their 4th or 5th year. I forget which year it was. Mm-hmm. So we're in the middle of this. It's just like everything's going great. We're just sponsoring people left and right, selling products. I mean, at the rate we were going, it seems like by the time we're 30, we could retire. And then, the big problem was, as you recall, was Herbalife was growing so quickly, they had a supply chain issue. And we had all these orders. We had I think it was almost as much as $100,000 worth of orders that we couldn't fill because we couldn't get product because it was backlogged for 1 month. But then we found out if you go down to Atlanta warehouse, Herbalife warehouse in Atlanta, you show up first thing in the morning, they'll load up your truck. So you and I went and rented a truck. We drove it down to Atlanta night and day, got there first thing in the morning. They loaded up our truck with huge amount of products. We drove back nonstop back up to New Jersey. By the time we got up there, we were delirious. And we had this huge truck full of products that we unloaded and sold within a few days. And then from there, it was just like a rocket ship. And things were going great. And then, unfortunately, the torpedo, it was like a torpedo hitting a ship. Herbalife was getting too successful, and they were going to set marketing history, and the pharmaceutical companies felt threatened by Herbalife. And they pulled their political strings and got the Senate to do a nationally televised investigation into Herbalife that was a bunch of BS, trying to make like the products were dangerous and all this nonsense, and that it was some type of illegal pyramid scheme. And none of that was true. All the charges were later dropped. It was just to make Herbalife look bad. And Herbalife's sales plummeted. I mean, some people thought possibly they would go out of business. But thanks to the dedication and commitment of Mark Hughes, Larry Thompson, and a lot of the top distributors and people involved in Herbalife, they were able to keep the ship together. But the sales did plummet. I think they went down maybe by 50% after that. But it slowly came back, and they eventually did hit $1 billion in sales, but it happened, a few years later. But Herbalife had relatively recently came to the East Coast where we were. We did not have the credibility of the name brand yet on the East Coast, especially in the New York metro area, where people are very skeptical to begin with. So then it became very difficult for us to sponsor anybody in to sell any products. And for a while there, we had to go get regular jobs to survive. And for me, my focus and dedication was to Herbalife. I don't think I was as committed and to, let's say, multi-level marketing as you were. You really believed in you were really committed to it. You did have this gift of sales and marketing and networking. And so I decided after all that stuff happened to go in a different path in my life. So I did not continue really in multi-level marketing after that. Of course you did. You built a huge successful career out of it. If it wasn't for that unfortunate thing that happened to Herbalife, I mean, we were on our way, and, I think we still would be involved with Herbalife at this point in our life. I mean, it wouldn't, but that was a very unfortunate thing that happened at that point. But that's life, that's, you just have to, we always fall down in life. The most important thing is get back up and just keep going. Never ever let anything just, stop you. Get up again, brush yourself off, learn your lessons, and move on.
Well, and 2 points on that, Tom. And I'm glad you brought up that Atlanta story, because that was crazy. One part of it, I don't know if you remember this or not, but remember, people didn't have credit cards in those days. Credit cards, I mean, it's only
we went there in cash.
We went there in cash because this wasn't. Tom and I didn't have $100,000. I can assure you, to buy product. We had our little bit of money for our personal product. Everything was everybody else's money in our downline. And we had about.
I think Mark helped us out a little bit.
Mark Zuckerberg helped us out. As a matter of fact, we flew to Charlotte. Mark was living in Charlotte. We flew to Charlotte.
Right.
Christina, his wife now of over 40 years. And, we had we flew there and we were like, hey, you guys want to sleep? It's like, nah, let us just rest up. And Christina made us a nice dinner at 1 o'clock in the morning. And we picked up the truck, and I think we left, I don't know, middle of the night. We got down into Atlanta. But by the way, for everybody listening, we were number 90 in line. I do remember that. We thought we were going to be there, I would be there, nobody would be there. The staff wouldn't even be there. We got there, we were number 90 in line, to give you an idea how well Herbalife was doing at that point. I want to say that was January of 1985, Tom. I may be off on my time frame a little bit here. So long ago.
It's probably around there, yeah.
But it was insane. But just think about that today. You're flying down there, 2 kids, $100,000 of cash. Nobody has any idea we've got it. We got it in a big envelope. And, so that was crazy in itself, of course. And then driving back, such a long.
We're lucky we didn't get caught. I mean, nowadays you get caught with all that cash, you're going to be in big trouble.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to think there's doing something illegal,
Yeah, exactly. And then the other part of that's an amazing story is the fact that Herbalife had its problems, and yet Herbalife, to your point, Tom, it was a great teaching moment for me what happened, because prior to that, with all the success, we saw that success. You and I used to go to meetings in Saddlebrook, New Jersey, at the Saddlebrook Marriott, which I haven't been in Jersey in a few years, so I assume it's still there. It was there last time I was there.
I think it is.
Right off of exit 159, I think, off the Parkway. And anyhow, we would go to our meetings. That's what was our local kind of meeting place. And you would go prior to the problem, and it was Porsches and Mercedes and high-end cars. After that problem, you saw all those cars get traded in by the top distributors, and all of a sudden they were in reality. What that taught me was financial prudence. And what I mean by that is that I did not make a lot of money in Herbalife in those days. I made a living. I made enough money to make it worth my while, but I certainly wasn't one of the top earners. But what it taught me was that when I eventually down the road, by 1991, when I started to be really successful in another company, network marketing, I learned how to save my money. I learned that, hey, you know what? This business is cyclical, like all businesses are. There's highs and lows. When the highs happen, pay your taxes, right? Pay your expenses and save some money. Put money away into your retirement account, et cetera. And I was diligent about that because I had saw so many people who didn't do that. And that was one of the things Mark Zuckerberg had preached to us, if you remember, was he didn't spend all his money. He saved his money, and he's still, fairly successful guy today. Here's one other thing about that, Tom, and I think you know this, but for everybody else's benefit, the ties that bind out of that. Here, Tommy and I have been friends now for well over 40 years. Mark Zuckerberg and I still talk on a regular basis, probably 2-3 times a week. We're still good friends. He lives out in San Diego now. And also Larry Thompson, who we mentioned. Larry Thompson is my neighbor here in Dallas, and he and I and his beautiful wife, Taylor, will be having lunch here in a few hours today. So here we are all these years later. And because during not the good times, but the bad times, we all kept our integrity and focus and remained humble, okay, by what we saw happen. And here we are still all friends after, all these many years. And that, to me, that's the greatest blessing of my early career in Herbalife is the relationships and, of course, the teaching. So let's talk about the teaching a little bit more, though, Tommy. I'm sorry to call you Tommy. I know I know we're in our 60s now, but you'll always be Tommy. Tommy Husted. 115 pound, Pascal Hill, state champion. That'll always be MVP, New Jersey State Tournament, all-time New Jersey win record. I think that got broken, by the way, finally. What did you have?
Well, no, what it is, here's the story. I was the first wrestler ever in New Jersey to have 100 wins. My senior year, I hit 100 wins. I ended up having 116 wins when I graduated. Up to that point, there was never any New Jersey wrestler that had 100 wins or more, and I did that for the first time. Since then, there's obviously been a lot of wrestlers who've gone over my 116 wins. So that was, a record that I set then, yeah. So it was.
I think the guy who broke it is a guy named Mike Gray, if I remember right.
Well, actually, it was broken the next year by somebody who had like 118 wins. So every year, because they wrestle more and more matches, so they can, better chance of breaking it. So, but I was the first one to hit the 100 mark, in 1977. Yeah.
So let's talk about wrestling a little bit, because wrestling,
sure.
As one of both of our mentors who we both, certainly respect to this day, the great Dan Gable used to say, after you wrestle, everything else in life is easy, right? Whether you were good, bad, or indifferent, the sport teaches you so much about independence. Tom Husted, legendary wrestler, one of the greatest, and I still follow the sport, Tom, down here in Dallas. We've had some really good boys out of here. Bo Nickel, who went on to win 2 or 3 NCAA titles at Penn State.
Sure, yeah.
Wrestled
Great wrestler.
Right up the road here. And we've had some other kids, Brandon Slay, who's also become a friend of mine, believe it or not, 2000 Olympic champion. He wasn't from Dallas. He was from Texas, though. I knew him through a connection here. So we've had some good kids, but I never saw a guy more dominant in high school than you were. I mean, you were flat out unbeatable. But what did wrestling here? Here we are now on the other end of life, right?
Almost,
what did wrestling teach you?
John. Wait. Let me finish. Let me just correct you for the record. Almost. Okay. My last 2 years, I didn't lose a match. I didn't have one close match. My last 2 years, except one.
Oh,
that was that semifinal match. I don't know if you were there for that match.
I was there.
My senior year. That was a classic, right? Basically, I go into this match undefeated. I didn't have a close match. Daryl Burrow, unknown. Nobody knew him, but he was undefeated. He was junior. I was a senior. I never heard of him before. I thought, I would win pretty easily. It was an extremely close match and it went into overtime, and I, won by 1 point. That match, and a lot of people say, even to this day, that may have been one of the greatest matches ever. They gave us both a standing ovation, and it was a really very close match. But it, it was a big lesson of, don't underestimate the other person. Like Daryl, I didn't know who he was, and I did underestimate him. But then it's like, whoa. I mean, it was like just the mental. I think I won that just through mental determination. That it was like, no way I'm going to lose this match. I have to win it one way or another. And I did. But that was the only close one I had my last 2 years.
Well, and that level of perseverance, to your point, right? Maybe you underestimated him a little bit. And just for everybody else that's not a wrestling person, Daryl Burley went on to win the NCAA tournament as a freshman. Was he the first freshman ever win? I don't remember.
No, he wasn't the first one. But, I don't think there's ever been, as far as I'm aware of, any wrestler ever in the history of NCAA wrestling that went from an unknown that year, where he first got on the map, where people started to notice him, was from that match with me. Up to that point, nobody really knew much about him. So he went from that match to 2 years later, winning the NCAAs as a freshman, beating the undefeated defending NCAA double champion, who was a senior. I don't think there was anybody who quite skyrocketed from nobody knew about him. Then 2 years later, he wins the NCAAs as a freshman. I mean, that's pretty unheard of, even in this day and age.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Yeah, you are seeing guys do it now, but of course, the sports.
But not to that degree. Usually those guys winning as freshmen now, they've been on the radar for a long time. They've been successful for a long time, and they're known. But Daryl Burley, up until 2 years before he did that, nobody really knew much about him.
Yeah.
And he ended up becoming my teammate. We were teammates at Lehigh, and we actually won Eastern National Championships together for Lehigh in the same gym, Princeton gym, that we had wrestled in, 4 years before. So we ended up being teammates and workout partners, down the road. And he was the nice, very intelligent, really nice guy, very humble, great teammate, great human being.
Tom, let's talk about this a couple of ways. Let's talk about your life overall. Okay. And we of course, we're talking so much about wrestling. What couple of things did you learn from wrestling that you've used now? And you're a dad now, right? You've got one child who's 18, I think.
Yeah.
And your other daughter is just a little one now. She's 2.5. And I see her bouncing around the internet. Can't wait to get over to Thailand one of these days and meet my niece. She's
she's great.
Who are you again? But talk about that. What did wrestling teach you about parenting, about life skills, about life in general?
Well, it taught me a lot. I mean, ultimately, I think in a lot of ways, wrestling probably saved my life. And I'm sure a lot of other athletes can say something similar, because I was getting into a lot of trouble, and the direction I was headed in was not very good, and I don't think it would have ended up very good. But fortunately, wrestling came into my life. It gave me a focus. It gave me discipline. And so I went from, getting into a lot of trouble and fighting to, becoming a successful athlete. And so it taught me, of course, discipline, focus, set goals, achieve those goals, never to give up, keep going, learn from your mistakes and move on and never give up. And also that, especially in an individual sport, it's also a team sport, but of course you go out in the mat one-on-one. It really teaches you have to really rely on yourself and believe in yourself. And because when you're out in that mat, it's just you and the other person. Same thing with judo or whatever, these one-on-one sports. You have to really dig deep within yourself sometimes, like I had to do with that match with Daryl to come through. And that continues throughout your life. We all have our ups and downs, our challenges in life, and it gives you those tools to do that. And so yeah, it was a great experience, and I'm really grateful for the experiences in wrestling that I would have never had otherwise, traveling around New Jersey, around the U.S., around the world, and competing and meeting all types of people from not only around the country, but around the world, to be exposed to different cultures and people. That's where I really got into traveling, was through wrestling. It opened me up beyond just Montvale, New Jersey, the suburb of New York City. And so, yeah, and then the people, like I met such incredible high quality people. Like when I was at Lehigh, one of the alumni was Mike Caruso. I had some contact with him, and these people are, super successful business people too. So, so in general, and then for me also, it really got me into my health and nutrition through wrestling, because I started to become more conscious of my diet, taking care of my body, exercising, all those things, which continues to this day. I think a big factor why I was so interested in Herbalife and nutrition and all that had to do also with wrestling, when I started to train and realized I needed to have a good diet and take care of my health. Yeah, those are all aspects of, yeah.
One of the things I've always admired about you, Tom, is not only through, being a dear friend all these years, and we haven't seen each other. My God, we haven't seen each other since I moved to Dallas in 1990, something, 2, 3.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And yet we're still friends. Is one of the things that I've admired, with you, is not only the fact that we stay in touch, of course, and all of that, but also the fact that you've grown as a person with all your life experiences. Share some of the places that you've lived, where you're living now, what you're doing now, and some of the things that you just once again have learned living literally around the world.
Yeah, I mean, if I told a lot of it, it would be a very long story, and try to make a long story short. Before moving to Thailand, I moved to Thailand 13 years ago. Before that, I was living mainly in California, also Hawaii. And again, trying to make a long story short, around 2008, during that financial crisis, I was affected by that. I had a choice whether I wanted to rebuild my life over again and do what I was doing then in the U.S., or something I had in the back of my mind that I wanted to live and work in Thailand. So I decided then in around 2009 or so to move to Thailand and start over in Thailand, which I did. It was one of the best decisions I ever made. And I also wanted to have a simpler life. And, part of having a simpler life is, it's less expensive to live here. In Thailand, it's a great place because it's a high quality of living with a low cost of living. Some places have low cost of living, but the quality of living isn't so great. Here in Thailand, you got both, which is quite good. It's also why it's such a popular place for tourists and people to come to retire. And I had a feeling ultimately I would retire here too. So I was able to have a simpler life. There was less stress and pressure. I didn't need to make that much money. And then finally, I guess it was about 3 years ago, before my daughter was born, I retired. And then soon after that, she was conceived and born. So it was kind of perfect timing that she came into our life. And then I started getting Social Security. She gets it too. And then in the last few years, I've been fortunate. I've made some very good investments. So as far as finances and money, I really don't have to think or worry about money for the rest of my life. My family's set, we're set. So that's nice. That's something I don't even have to think about, especially in Thailand. It's so inexpensive to live here. So I no longer work for money. So my big focus, of course, is my family, enjoying life, and also my inner life, my spiritual life, and continuing to grow on all levels, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So so that's kind of making a long story short. And it's always challenging when you live in another country. It's a different culture, different language. You have to adjust, and learning to things are different here, of course. And I'm very fortunate. I have a beautiful little daughter. She's just a little special angel, and then a wonderful, beautiful wife who's a fantastic mother to our daughter. So I feel very fortunate. We're in the process of building a big, beautiful house up north. And so, yeah, things are very, very good here. I mean, there's been times in the last, whatever, 40 years, I guess it would, yeah, there's been the ups and downs as there always is in life. But I feel like I've learned and grown so much that it's like, nothing much phases me at this point. I can deal with it, whatever it is.
And Tom, you had spent some time in Cambodia, I think it was a few years ago. So I remember you sending me pictures. That's a country a lot of Americans, in particular, North Americans, a lot of my show is listened to by people here in the U.S. and Canada and England and such. Most of us had never been there. I've been to Thailand, of course, but Cambodia. Tell me about that country a little and that experience that you had there.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to most countries in Southeast Asia because it's so easy to go to from here. Cambodia, I've been there twice. I've been to Angkor Wat. There's a very famous ancient Khmer temple complex there. It's quite amazing. As far as Cambodia, it's a pretty poor country. There's a lot of poverty there. It can be a little shocking because, unfortunately, what they went through during the Vietnam War with the Khmer Rouge and everything, with the massacre that occurred. And there's still, the underlining trauma and effects from all that. And unfortunately, they've had very corrupt, basically communist dictatorship. The people are really beautiful, friendly, lovely people, but the country's been through a lot. And there's a lot of poverty, people begging their children. And so that's very, very unfortunate for a country that was at one point, hundreds of years ago, the most greatest and most powerful kingdom of ever in this part of Asia was centered in Cambodia, Angkor Wat. It was the Khmer Empire. They originated from India originally, hundreds of years ago, and they built these incredible Hindu temples. My wife's half Khmer. If you saw her, you would think she's from India. She looks like she's from India, kind of very exotic looking. But she was born and raised here, but one side of her family is originally Khmer people, and she speaks Khmer, an ancient language, and they originated from India. So it's a very interesting culture and history Cambodia has. And so she's half Khmer, and she speaks Khmer, and that's what the people in Cambodia speak is Khmer. But it would not be, to be very honest, it's not a place I would want to live. For me, Thailand's the perfect place in Southeast Asia for me to live. It's got the best of both worlds.
And you spent some time in India way back too. You were over there for what, a year?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've spent a lot of time coming and going from India. I have a spiritual teacher who passed on in '69, Mayor Baba, who was from India. And India is very interesting. Have you been to India, John?
Twice. Yeah. Twice.
Okay, yeah. Well, I've been all over. At one point, I traveled all over when I was younger. I wouldn't do that again because I got very sick after that. Now I don't. If I go, I don't too much. But it's a place everywhere. It's supposed to be very heavenly and very hellish. I mean, it's all rolled into one. It's very crowded and busy, and it's got everything. But at the same time, there's this very ancient, amazing culture, the Hindu Vedic culture, which goes back thousands of years, and they preserved it. The Vedas are the most ancient spiritual scriptures in the world that go way, way back. So they got this amazing culture and Sanskrit, of course, ancient language that they've been able to maintain and preserve over the thousands of years in spite of invasions and colonization. It has just continued unbroken. So it's very unusual. There's not too many places in the world where that's happened. Usually, the colonizers come, the conquerors come, and they lose a lot of that. But in India, they've been able to keep it one way or another. And so it's quite unusual, amazing place.
It really is. I remember being, I forget whether it was Hyderabad or Ahmedabad, because I was to both on business way back. This was in 2000, right before 9/11, the year before 9/11. And I was going to meet some engineers. I was trying to do a thing with a telephony product with a partner from Los Angeles, one of my non-multi-level businesses. And I'll never forget, Tom, getting there, and we rented a car, and we had a driver, and we started in this very poor community where people were just literally living in dirt huts, so to speak, garbage bags as their roofs. Very, very sad. And you start to wind up around this mountain, and you get to the top, and here's this beautiful building that had been built by like Microsoft and some of the high tech companies and all of these engineers there. And Bill Clinton had been there the week before, because I'm wondering why are all the American flags kind of here? Clinton was still president.
Yeah.
It might have been 99 because he was still in. But anyway,
Yeah, right.
but nonetheless, I had remarkable experiences there. But tell me this, Tom. So you're living in a part of the world that most Americans know little about, really. What would be the number one feature? Okay, because I've been to Thailand, but I haven't been to see you, and you weren't there when I was there. As a matter of fact, that was that same trip that I stopped. I stopped in Bangkok. I was there for a few days, kind of recharging, and then off to India because it's such a long flight, of course. And then on the way back, we stopped again. But spent most of the time in Bangkok, so didn't have an opportunity to get to where you are. But give me a normal day for you as an American guy brought up in New Jersey, like I was, living in such a different part of the world than North America. What is it like?
Well, I'm just going to talk in general, of course. Of course, first of all, there's the language difference, right? But there is more and more and a lot of people that do speak English here, so I usually don't have too much of a problem with that. But there can be the, challenges of language. But, the Thai people are very easygoing and peaceful. And so day-to-day things are, very relaxed and friendly and just not stressful, generally speaking. Thai people are simple people. They can live on very little money. Even though people may not make a lot of money here, they live simply. And outside of Bangkok, there's really no homelessness because everybody has a family farm, pretty much, almost everybody, to go back to live if they have. So like recently in the downturn in the economy because, COVID and the lockdowns and all that and tourism decreasing, a lot of people lost their jobs. So a lot of those people just went back to their home village, back to the little house in their home village, and they usually have a rice field or whatever, and they live simply and they survive, Sure, it can be a struggle, but they have a roof overhead and they got food. So they always have that. For example, my partner, she's got a bunch of farmland, rice. She grew up in a small farming village up north, first 10 years of her life. And we're just talking about like not even 40 years ago. First 10 years of her life, no electricity, no water, no nothing. That was normal in the little villages up there back in the 80s, right? Normal. That was not. Now it's, of course, different. They have all those things. So the first 10 years of her life, they were living pretty simple, but they had a roof over their head. They had their rice farming fields, and she still has those farm fields. They've been in the family for generations. Will never sell those rice farming fields. A lot of Thais can be land rich and maybe penny poor, but they got their land and they got the roof over their head and they're okay. As a matter of fact, we're building a nice home up there on one of her farm fields. So they're still rooted in maybe like our grandparents were at one point in the U.S. Most people, quite a large percentage of people, grew up on family farms, and they still have those farms. So that makes the culture and society very, very different. And don't forget, Thailand's never been colonized. They were never colonized. All the countries around Thailand were colonized. The reason they were never colonized was the king of Thailand at that time was a very wise person. He had been a monk before he became a king, well educated. He spoke English and French, and he negotiated with the English and French, and he gave up some land in exchange that they would not colonize and take over Thailand. Wow. But Thailand's always kept its independence. So because of that, they have a very strong culture, very strong religion with Buddhism and everything. And they're very, proud of that, of course. So, but at the same time, there's been a lot of tourism here, so they're used to tourists, they're used to foreigners, and they're very, very accepting of foreigners. So it's not a problem. I mean, for example, my daughter in the village up north that we live in, we're building the house. She's the only half Thai, half foreign child up there. And she's a little bit of a star in the village because of that, because, she's, what I'm saying? So, and they consider them, the most beautiful because they're mixed blood. And there's been some big movie stars in Thailand who were half, foreign, half Thai. And you mix that blood together and you get quite, a beautiful, attractive combination. So, but yeah, But, I'm retired now, so my life's pretty basic and simple every day. I do pretty much what I want. I exercise, I do yoga, I meditate, and just enjoy my life. And I stay up to date with things, whether it's, but I'm not like ignorant of what's going on in the world. And I still have some investments, so I stay up to date with things going on with that.
So two things, Tom, kind of wrapping up here. I know it's late at night there. I appreciate you
That's
doing this
okay.
at
Don't
night.
worry about it.
It's
not that late.
One is just a comment, by the way. She is beautiful, your little girl. I enjoy all the videos that you send me of her. She's she's always dancing. She's definitely a happy child, and that
yeah.
I don't know your wife, but I know you, and that's part of who you are. You've always been a happy guy, but you've always asked a lot of questions. You know what I mean? Like happy, but inquisitive. Not just happy-go-lucky. Just kind of, hey man, what makes people happy? And that's something that you always brought to everything that you've done, and it's always been a blessing to our friendship and relationship going back all those years. But if there was one life lesson, whether it's as a parent now, as a American living in another part of the world where you're really part of the community, you've lived there, major part of your life, of course, whether it's going back to your wrestling days, what would be that life lesson that you want to share? One thing that you can tell our audience that they can do maybe differently or think about differently than they did prior to our interview.
Now, let me ask you, is this one life lesson besides the 3 life lessons I'm going to give you at the end, or?
Well, what one huge life lesson and then the 3 life lessons.
Okay. One huge life. Okay. That one, I'm prepared for the 3 life lessons, but the one huge life lesson. So the one huge life, let's say that again, connected with what?
One huge, with everything that you've experienced, right, in your life. What's that one? The one huge life lesson with the 3 smaller lessons associated with it.
Whoa, I'd have to think about that, because the three life lessons I'm going to give you are all 3 pretty big ones I thought about, because I didn't take that lightly. So then to add on to that one that's really
well, let me rephrase the question. How to have a great life, because you've had a great life. You've had a great life, not an easy life, but a great life. You've made it a great life. You've chosen to take the path of having a great life where, you could have made decisions that, would have resulted maybe in not such a great life in everything that you've done.
Okay, yeah. So you had told me ahead of time about the 3 best life advice. So I thought about this pretty deeply. So here's my 3, okay? The first advice is, the future is a fantasy, a dream or a hope. The past is a memory. No one has been able to show me where the past or future is except in one's own mind. So the best way to deal with the past is being in the present moment. The best way to manifest what you want while preparing for the future is being in the present moment. When we are in what is termed the zone, we are fully in the present moment. Then we are truly empowered in the power of now. So the key is to be here now through accepting what is right here and now, and by letting go of our judgments and projections of the past and future. So basically, it's to be in the present moment. That's number 1, because so often we're caught up in the past and future. And when athletes are performing, their best performance is very that zone. The zone is you're totally in that. You're not even thinking about winning or losing. I've experienced that at times when I've wrestled. And that's when we enjoy life the most. Artists, musicians, that's what happens. They're just totally playing their instrument, totally doing what they're doing, and they're enjoying it. And they're not thinking about anything else, let's say, than what they're doing. Okay, 2, if you increase your self-worth, usually your net worth will increase. But an increase in your net worth will not necessarily lead to an increase in your self-worth. As true abundance and prosperity is really a state of mind, a state of one's consciousness. As there's millionaires and even billionaires who don't feel they have enough because they don't feel they are enough, as they lack true self-worth, which goes beyond just having money and wealth. So work on your self-worth as much, if not more, than on your net worth. Then help others to increase their self-worth, which will eventually lead to an increase in their net worth, as one usually leads to the other. So what I'm trying to say here basically is, as we feel better about it, we have a better self-worth, and we feel deserving, our net worth will increase. I know in my life, I've seen that clearly, and in other people's life. Because we know plenty of people that have lots of money, and it's never enough because they don't have that. They don't feel enough. They don't have a good feeling of self-worth about themselves. And number three, last but not least, everyone and everything in the physical world is impermanent, will not last forever. It has been said to seek first the kingdom of heaven, which dwells within, then all else shall be added on. So by seeking and finding the kingdom of heaven within, which is really a higher state of consciousness, you'll discover true and lasting security, happiness, and love that can never be taken away from you because it's within you and it's who you really are. As we are not just finite, limited human beings, eternal, infinite spiritual beings having human experience. It's like that popular rock and roll song from the 80s that said we are spirit in the material world, which I truly believe. And one last thing that I remind myself every day is not to limit the unlimited one. And that unlimited one can be what some call God, Jesus, Avatar, your higher self, the universe, or whatever. So I limit what is unlimited.
Okay, well, we're waiting for Tom to rejoin us. Let me just kind of give you guys a quick announcement that we're going to go to the show every other week here. I'm starting to travel again with my regular network marketing business. So we're going to be going every other week starting in June. So if you look for the show one week and there's not a new show, go to leavingnothingtochance.com for one of the old show archives that you can certainly listen to. And now there's over 70 of them, including this one that we're doing with Tommy. So bear with us here, and I'm sure Tom will be right back with us. He's probably trying to re-sign in. I know he's staying at a resort where he is. So we'll just give him a second here to get back up here. Okay, so Tom, from the major life lesson to the three individual lessons, you're up.
Okay, so I've thought about these three best life advice. You had warned me ahead of time about this. So I thought about them quite deeply. So it's not just going to be, get a good night's sleep or, have a good diet and exercise. Be a little bit more than that. Not that that's not important. So one, you could say it's advice, philosophy, however you want to look at it. But number one, so the future is a fantasy, a dream or a hope. The past is a memory. So no one has ever been able to show me where the past or future is except in one's own mind. So the best way to deal with the past is being in the present moment. The best way to manifest what you want by preparing for the future is also being in the present moment. When we are in what is termed the zone, we are fully in the present moment, then we're fully empowered in the power of now. So be here now, through accepting what is now by letting go of our judgments and projections of the past and future. So it's just about, just do whatever you do, be here now. Don't think too much about the future or the past, and enjoy whatever you're doing. Two, if you increase your self-worth, usually your net worth will increase. But an increase in your net worth will not necessarily lead to an increase in your self-worth. True abundance and prosperity is really a state of mind, a state of one's consciousness, as there's millionaires and even billionaires who don't feel they have enough because they don't feel they are enough, as they lack true self-worth, which goes beyond just having money and wealth. So work on your self-worth as much, if not more, than on your net worth. Then help others to increase their self-worth, which will eventually lead to an increase in their net worth, as one usually leads to the other. And I know this has been very true in my life. As my self-worth increases, my net worth seems to increase also. And the last one, number three, last but not least, everyone and everything in the physical world is impermanent. It will not last forever. It's been said, seek first the kingdom of heaven, which dwells within, then all else shall be added on. So by seeking and finding the kingdom of heaven within, which is really a higher state of consciousness, you'll discover true and everlasting security, happiness, and love that can never be taken away from you because it's within you and it's who you really are. As we are not just finite, limited human beings, but eternal, infinite spiritual beings having a human experience. It's like that popular rock and roll song from the 1980s that said we are spirits in the material world, which I truly believe we are. And one last thing that I remind myself every single day is not to limit the unlimited one. And that unlimited one can be what some call God, Jesus, Buddha, a true guru or avatar, your higher self, the universe, or whatever. So why limit what is unlimited? Just be open to all possibilities and let go of your limitations and allow the unlimited possibilities into your life. As they say, expect a miracle, and remember, life itself is a miracle. And no matter whatever may be going on in your life, in the world around you, there's actually a much greater power that's running the show. That power is the same power that created the universe and created you. So tap into that power by being fully present in the present moment. So in ending, I wish you, John, and all your listeners a good fortune, as I believe we earn our good fortune through both effort and grace, as I do not believe in luck, except if you happen to go into a casino and hit the jackpot.
Well, Tom, it's been a pleasure in spite of the internet. But, you know, it's so funny if you think about it. When we started a business together 39 years ago, April 18th, there was no internet. There were no cell phones, right? God. I mean, we used to call each other on the phone and you know, leave a message and, you know, call back and you know, anyway, it's been a pleasure, my friend, and I appreciate you staying up late there. And I know you're kind of on a little vacation there. And what are you doing at the resort? What is it, a resort or a retreat? What are you doing?
Well, I'm down in this island in southern Thailand called Koh Phangan. I'm down here for a little while because I'm waiting for them to build the house and everything. And so just down here for maybe a couple more months.
Ah, good. Well, thank you so much.
Right by the beach. I can see the ocean and the beach from here.
Ah, what is it, about 9:30 there at night?
Yeah, it's a 12-hour difference. So yeah, it would be
exactly
about 9:30, right? 9:30 at night, right?
Wow. Well, Tom, this has been fun. And listen, folks, Tom's had a remarkable life, as you can probably tell. You know, he's been all over the world. He's been a successful athlete. He's been a successful parent. He's been a successful husband. He's had a great life because he's focused on some of the principles that we've talked about today. And just a reminder, folks, too, we're going to be going to every other week format for Leaving Nothing to Chance, starting with this show. So if you're watching this show, just make it in your calendar. I know we've been every week, but I'm starting to travel again internationally. So sometimes it just makes it difficult with my schedule to line up really great guests like Tom and all the other great guests that you've heard on the show. Their schedules, my schedule, etc. So keep that in mind going forward. We'll be every other Tuesday on Spotify, iTunes, and all the other great podcast networks out there that carry our show. So, Tom, once again, thanks, and give you the last word. What do you want to say?
Well, thank you, John, for inviting me on your show. This is the second interview I've done in the last week, and the one I did last week was the first interview I did in years. So maybe I'll be doing more, maybe I won't. I don't know. But yeah, it's been great reconnecting and connecting with you, and yeah, it's been good. It's all good.
It has. Great stuff, Tom. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Leave Nothing to Chance. If you want to know more about what it takes to succeed in the network marketing space, join us again next week for another amazing episode. For additional resources and to connect with John Solleder, visit leavingnothingtochance.com. Don't forget to leave a review, and we'll see you next time.